Hi, my name's Andrew Doe, and I'm 18. I've been a die-hard Kingdom Hearts fan since the day the game came out in 2001. I've played all the installments of the game, even 358 over 2 days, which I found lacking compared to the rest, and have kept myself posted on every piece of news related to the series. I'm writing this as both a warning and as a testament in case anything happens to me in the near future. Let's get this over with. Well, I was on eBay and I had found a copy of the final mix edition of Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. Seeing as I only have the original version, which I've beaten 10 times over, I decided to take a look. Apparently the auctioneer was very eager to get rid of it because the description of the item he had given was, "Please, please, please, take this from me." I was a bit worried since he was only charging $3 for the game, adding in shipping and handling of course, and since there were no bidders from the item, I should have disregarded it right then. It would have saved me so much trouble. But, like an idiot, I figured, it's only $3, I can spare it. I had sent the money and expected the game within 3 days. It arrived on my doorstep in a small package sent by the post office. The postman was a bit suspicious of me and asked me for my signature. I took the package and signed my name on the dotted line. It was only after returning to the house that I see why he was so shifty. The package had no return address. Before I opened it up, I emailed the auctioneer only to be met with no reply. I went back on eBay and found that he had deactivated his account right after the bid. This was getting more and more freaky by the minute, but I was more excited with playing my new game than I was of a shifty con man. I opened the package and saw the final mix cover of Birth by Sleep. At least he had sent the game like he promised. I opened the box and saw no manual, only the game, a memory stick, 2 gigabytes by the looks of it, and a note. Curious, I took the cryptic note and read it. It said, "When the darkness swallows all, be sure not to fall into its void. Keep your mind, and you'll keep your life." I thought it was an advertisement from Square Enix for something and had planned, since it seemed typed in their font, so I just put the note away. I took the UMD out the box to see that it was completely blank. No picture of the game's logo, no serial number, no credentials for all that matter. Just a UMD. He probably removed the picture for some odd reason. Probably to stare at the picture of Aqua? Perv. Maybe? I'll never know. So I ignored it and placed the game and the included memory stick into my PSP. The moment I turned on the PSP, it took me to its systems menu. I kept automatic startup off at all times just in case. I looked at the save data utility and opened the data contained in the stick. He had played through all the stories in level 1 critical mode. A gamer like that likes a challenge, a dying breed. He had a secret episode file, so he'd beaten the game and unlocked the secret movie, including the secret episode and its movie. There was one other file, but there was something off. The save logo had no picture of whatever character he was playing as. Now that I think about it, it lacked the Birth by Sleep logo too. The text showing where he was, when he saved, and what level he was were all written with the letter X. Level, X. Location, 6 X's. Date, XX, XX, XXXX. This must have been a hack or something. I tried to delete it, but whenever I highlighted the file, I couldn't access the options menu for some reason. Whoever this was adamant that this file stay alive. I exited out of the utility and started the game up. Glitches were abound. The PSP logo never came on when the game started up, nor did its short jingle. I got the typical checking memory stick prompt and confirmed it. The opening cinematic to the game never came on. It had gone directly to the title screen. Oddly enough, the text was in English, something unexpected from a Final Mix game. Final Mixes tend to have Japanese text unless English text is unlockable somehow. The title screen itself lacked music and had an ominous feel to it. There were no other pictures in the background at all, unlike the other Kingdom Hearts games I've played. Just the game's logo, which was colored red and black for some odd reason, and the options. Installed data wasn't available, for when I tried to click on it, a prompt came up saying that it wasn't required. I went to continue, only to find that I couldn't load any of his old files. All of them gave me the same message prompt whenever I clicked on one of them. Mark your own path. I then tried to load up the hacked file. Another prompt with another cryptic message. See the void for yourself. This wasn't what I thought it was. It must have been a hack, but I paid money for this thing and I didn't want it to go to waste. I went to new game. It asked about difficulty like always, however only one option was available. This option was totally blank and no description followed it. I pressed it, seeing how as I couldn't do anything else. The title screen then faded in an acid-like blur. I was getting more and more nervous by the minute. Instead of an opening sequence, I was greeted with another cryptic message, though this one lacked a prompt or choice. When the burrow breaks, the cradle will not only fall, it will deteriorate everything else it touches on the way down. Don't let the cradle fall, or all will be for naught. It seemed like a warning. But for what? The scary, cryptic opening served to weird me out rather than scared me, but it turns out that it was just a warm-up compared to what I saw next. The character select screen where you choose between Terra, Ventus, and Aqua in the actual game comes up. The music normally heard in this little sequence is distorted, practically demonic with its low pitch and treble. Instead of the typical scene, the awakening floor where the three usually stand is cracked into 3 pieces, each of the 3 on their own piece. The background surrounding the awakening is a purplish hue instead of the normally serene black. I then see Terra, Ventus, and Aqua, but I see the 3 impaled on what looks like spikes of darkness jutting out of the cracks in the awakening, the spikes piercing through their bodies and coming out of their chests in a very graphic manner. From what I could see, blood was dripping from the corpses, impaled on the spikes onto the pieces they were on, the blood then falling into the bottomless abyss below. My eyes widened in half fear, half disgust. Since when does Kingdom Hearts have blood? But another more unnerving question. Since when does Kingdom Hearts contain the sprites for blood in the first place? The option to select them comes up. Their picture logos show their eyes dripping tears of blood, while their skin is pale gray. Eyes scare easy, so I began to breathe heavily. Whoever hacked this had a very sick mind. While trying to keep cool, I tried to select Aqua in an effort to test for some sort of degree of normalcy. Like I expected, a message came up. A victim of the void. I tried for Terra and Ventus. 2 more messages. For Terra, the builder of the cradle. For Ventus, the wind pushing the cradle. The nursery rhyme messages only serve to scare me more. Nowadays, whenever somebody hears a nursery rhyme, it's usually in a horror movie, and it always signifies trouble. I moved to what appeared to be a 4th option. The scene zooms in on what appears to be a total shadow, their figure obscured from view. The shadow in question looks like it's using Terra's sprite model, but their body, face, and features are all black, as if it's trying to hide itself. Think the anti-Sora from Kingdom Hearts 2, only no color whatsoever. I select its option and another message comes up. The wind is blowing continuously. Can you balance the cradle? A choice came up. This must be part of the warning. With a very deep inhale, I chose yes. A light shines on the figure as an ear-deafening screech fills my ears, the scene zooming past the figure's face and onto a loading screen. I don't know what that was, and this was just the beginning. At that moment, I find myself in the world map in the game. This was Hack 2. The purple/pink backgrounds usually present were now pitch black, and I could almost swear sprites resembling eyes were put there, watching the map through the background textures. You know, where if you go to the edge of the map and are pushed back, those textures. The music that plays is, like The Awakening, low-pitched and demonic. I seem to be in control of the figure shown on the select screen. His key glider sprite wasn't spared modification either. The figure seems to be riding what appears to be a bloody object. It looked like a cross to me at first, but once I moved a little, I saw what looked like wings flapping. I chose to ignore this and look around. I moved the figure to the left of the map where the Princess of Heartworlds were. The Mirage Arena was gone, instead replaced with what looked like a human eye. It looked bloodshot, and it kept itself trained on the figure whenever I moved, as if it were poised to strike or something. My breathing became worse. What did all this mean? I didn't risk going near it and moved the figure downwards. The Princess Worlds, Enchanted Dominion, Castle of Dreams, and Dwarf Woodlands were all glitched. Their structures were placed with random binary data formed into the shape of the worlds themselves. I tried going near the Enchanted Dominion, but the figure was pushed away the moment I had gotten close, as if I had touched a barrier. These worlds were disabled, obviously. I moved the figure away from this area and went to the other side of the map. Deep Space, Neverland, Disney Town, and Olympus Coliseum were glitched up in the same way, and they were also inaccessible. I moved to the southern part of the map. The mysterious tower and the land of departure weren't even there. The only familiar world I saw was the Destiny Islands. I cautiously moved the figure toward the world. At that moment, the landing prompt came up. In the normal game, you can't land on the Destiny Islands. I honestly wanted to put the game down right now and just forget about all I've seen, but something inside me urged on. Almost as if there was somebody else telling me to keep playing. I chose Visit This World from the landing prompt. This time the game just faded to a black screen like always, a loading screen popping up. I had calmed down a little bit, but that comfort didn't last. Once it loaded, I found the figure I was playing as standing by a wooden door on the island's right side, his features still hidden despite the sunshine in the world's sky. I was stunned. Since when was this world playable? As I examined the textures, they seemed off. The normal wooden textures that made the Destiny Islands look tropical seemingly bled around into the other textures of the world, giving the place a distorted look. There was no music, though I thought I heard what sounded like sobbing in the distance. The figure began to walk forward, beyond my control. I try to get him to stop, but I can't, so I sit and wait. The figure walks to the shore of the beach, just as two boys come running into the area. I soon see that they're Sora and Riku, their young selves just like in the original game. They were Hack 2. Their clothes were bloody, as if they had just come out of a desperate struggle. One of Riku's eyes were missing, an empty socket in place of his left eye. Sora suffered the same affliction, only with his right eye. The eyes that were working had bloody tears dripping from them, just like the pictures on the character select screen. Their flesh looked mangled, almost zombie-like. The two immediately take out their wooden swords and enter battle poses, intending to engage the figure in combat. Sora says something angrily, but all I hear are static and glitch sounds, and the subtitles seem disabled, so I couldn't understand him at all. At this point, I was simply speechless. I didn't know what this had meant, nor did I want to know. But I had to keep playing. I had to know what it was trying to tell me, or it would haunt me forever. The scene then zoomed in on the figure's back. The figure extends his right arm as a keyblade appears in his hand. With an insane chuckle, he finally turns around to face the camera. At that moment, the black color covering his features started to melt off of his body, bleeding into the textures of the islands and distorting them further. I knew who it was now. It was Xehanort, in Terra's body just like the original game. In reality, it was Terra just with his eyes turned yellow and his hair turned white, but I knew who this was supposed to be. The keyblade in the figure's hand turned out to be Xehanort's as well, another dead giveaway as to the figure's identity. Another loading screen went by, then the scene moved to the figure's back as an information bar showing a current objective hovered over the screen. And I couldn't believe what it had said. Kill them. At this point, I practically shat a brick. This was some freaky shit. As soon as I was in control of Xehanort, I noticed a few things. First off, the mugshot in the HP bar wasn't there, just like in the save file. Secondly, there was no D-Link or shot lock gauge for Xehanort to use. There was also no music playing in the background. Just that sobbing that seemed to grow louder with each passing minute. Finally, I had paused the game and saw one of the most haunting images I've ever seen in my life. On the pause screen was an image of a real-life man being torn in half by an odd-looking machine, his blood splattering all over the camera that took the photo. His face was contorted in agony as the intestines that were falling out were visible in clear detail. The image was so realistic. It obviously wasn't part of the game. I literally screamed bloody murder, throwing up where I was sitting the moment I saw it. What kind of asshole would pass out filthy shit like that? In an effort to calm myself, I took in a deep breath. I had seen some stuff that was not going to be leaving my mind anytime soon. It was far too late to turn back. I had to know why all this was made. I unpaused the game again to find myself playing as Xehanort. Sora and Riku began to advance. I had Xehanort running up to Sora, attacking him with the normal 3-hit combo. Xehanort played just like Terra, so I knew his strengths and weaknesses. Sora could barely fight, so he was no challenge. I noticed that as I attacked Sora, the sky started changing color. Once I depleted Sora's HP to 0, the sky was blood red. The scene zooms in for a reaction sequence. Sora tries to attack one last time, but as he jumps in the air to attack from above, Xehanort aims his hand at Sora, the game prompting me to constantly press X. I do so to see Xehanort's hand charging up with dark energies. The prompt disappears as Xehanort releases a spike of darkness that stabs through Sora's chest and out the other side. The scene zooms in on Sora's face as he says, "The bow is breaking, Andrew. Are you strong enough?" I was sweating now. How did Sora know my name? No. How did the hacker know my name? At that moment, Sora's body explodes into a shower of red as his blood and entrails falls onto the sand. Xehanort turns to engage Riku. Riku stops short and exits out of a combat stance. He looks at Xehanort with what seemed to be pity. Then he turns and looks at me directly. "The cradle will fall and deteriorate everything," Riku says to me. "All you know will cease to exist, and so will you." My hands were literally shaking now. I was starting to get the feeling that this was no hack at all. It was something worse. "But don't worry," Riku says as he turns his wooden sword upon himself, preparing to stab. Riku does so, as the sword runs through him, blood gushing from his body as he falls to his knees. You'll get a glimpse of the void before you fall. With a death moan, Riku finally lands on the sands of Destiny Islands lifelessly. My legs were spasming, my eyes were wide, sweat was falling from every pore in my body. I vomited again. I could not believe what I was seeing. Riku just committed suicide and addressed me directly. Me, not Xehanort. Me. I was put in control of Xehanort again as he responded to my movement commands this time. All I could really do was take in what the hell just happened. Now I know. This is no hack. I used the camera controls to look around. Sora's blood and guts from earlier was still there, reacting whenever Xehanort stepped toward them. Riku's corpse just lay there on the sand as blood flowed from the wound made by the wooden sword struck inside and into the water by the shore. Oddly enough, it felt as though he was looking at Xehanort the whole time, but I just chalked it up to how he fell. Things started up again. The blood that entered the water tainted it, as red colorings started taking the place of the vast ocean slowly. I decided not to stick around to see what else happened and moved Xehanort toward the dock where Selphie usually sits in the original game. The wood holding the walkway together was broken, as the structure bent down like a pair of stairs, a la End of the World from the original Kingdom Hearts game. I moved Xehanort further down the mainland, near the treehouse area. This was shocking. Throughout the whole area, I saw what appeared to be intestines or some sort of organic material stretched across the rock face, and all across the wooden docks that must have survived whatever happened here. I ignore it for the sake of my sanity, moving closer to the secret place. As Xehanort advances to the secret place, the screen begins to crackle with static for each step he takes. By the time he's directly near the cave entrance, the whole screen becomes staticky. Finally, nothing but static, entering another loading screen, the static remaining throughout. The static finally begins to subside as I see him standing by the exit to the cave, parallel from the door, but I immediately freaked out. Instead of the usual rock sketches and rock textures one would expect, the rock face was replaced with muscle-looking matter. It was most likely just red color modification, while the sketches, such as the one for Sora and Kairi, for example, were replaced by real-life photos similar to the one I saw in the pause menu, lowered in size and apparently just pasted onto the texture itself. All of the photos shown were people being killed and taken apart in gruesome and grotesque ways, many of the depictions involving dismemberment. One depicted a little child, at least 7 years of age, whose upper body skin was removed in the shape of a t-shirt, as he is seen staring at the camera filled with sorrow. The skin was discarded right near him, implying that the cameraman was the perpetrator. I almost dropped the PSP in my hands when I saw it. The other photos were even worse, so gruesome that I dare not describe them lest I vomit again. I had Xehanort running up to the door, only for the door to begin to move away from him. It must be intended, because the longer I spent running toward the door, the more it moved away. I tried running backward toward the exit, only for it not to be there at all. It was a one-way road. After a time of running toward the door fruitlessly, a D-Link gauge finally appeared by Xehanort's HP gauge. Now I'm worried. So far, something in this game happens for a reason. Despite the trembling of my fingers, I cautiously pressed the right directional button as the D-Link list came up. There was only one option that looked like a word written in binary code, full of zeros and ones. What it meant, however, I had no clue. With a shuddering sigh, I pressed the X button. At that moment, a voice echoes from an unknown area as everything around Xehanort grows dark. When the wind blows, the cradle will fall. The floor disappears beneath Xehanort as he begins to fall, another loading screen starting up. Throughout the loading process, Xehanort is seen falling into an endless abyss. Another voice, this one sounding like Riku. Down will come baby, cradle and all. After that verse of the nursery rhyme, I start to hear agonized screaming of random origin and random pitches echoing in the background of wherever Xehanort was. I started getting nervous again. How much worse could this get? Stupid question. The loading symbol disappears after 1 minute of silence as Xehanort finally lands. I gain control of him right away as I scan my surroundings. This was the awakening. Jutting from the platform I was on is seen a walkway. The walkway was made up of more pasted-in decapitation photographs, arranged in the shape of a curving path downwards. This spelled trouble in capital letters. Whatever this game was trying to tell me wasn't in a hurry. In fact, it was almost goading me to seek the answer out on my own. But I had come this far, endured too much shit, saw too much horror not to know the answer. I deserved the answer. I moved Xehanort closer onto the photograph road, deciding against using the camera to examine them. I have enough stuff in my mind for years to come. Once he reaches the first tile and begins walking across, I hear screaming in the background. I stop and then take another step. Another scream, this one of a higher intensity. Breathing hard, but persistently, I have Xehanort run at full speed down the path. The screams practically bleed my ears out, but eventually I make it across the path and onto the awakening from the character select screen. They were there, Terra, Ventus, and Aqua, still impaled on the spikes from before. It looks as though the blood on the places has dried. I use the camera controls to find myself standing on Terra's piece of the awakening. I turn around to see that the photograph pathway has disappeared. I was stranded, and that's when I heard the sounds. Oh God, the sounds. I hear squishing and moving as I see the corpses attached to the spikes begin to writhe in place. I used the camera to look around in first-person view. Ventus was simply moving around in place, while Aqua's head was spinning in place over and over, exorcist style. The worst one yet was Terra. I see Terra's body place its hands around the spike stabbing it, and proceeding to climb, or should I say scoot or shamble, up near the spike, near the tip. Once it got off the tip, it fell to the ground right next to Xehanort. With a grunt of effort, the body raises itself and stands upright. Xehanort jumps backward beyond my control, the camera beginning to focus on Terra, cutscene style. The time has come, Andrew, Terra says. I hear more squishing sounds as Aqua and Ventus finally find their way off their spikes and are now facing Xehanort. This was it. Whatever the reason I'm playing this was right here, right in front of my eyes. What was eerie was that it was only their bodies contorted. Aqua was missing an ear, and one of Ventus's eyes were missing. Aside from that, everything else was perfectly normal. Especially Terra. Aside from a stomach wound, he didn't have a scratch on him. It was almost as if nothing happened to them. Maybe this was a symbol? The camera focuses on Aqua and Ventus, looking at me through the camera. When the wind blows, Ventus says. The cradle will fall, Aqua says. The camera then switches to Terra. And down will come Andrew, cradle and all. Finally, I get pissed and yell my head off. I was desperate, scared, and concerned. What's the cradle? What's the wind? What the hell are you guys? I know they won't respond. It's just a game. But I couldn't hold it in any longer. Why am I playing this? Aqua and Ventus look at each other, then back at me. They both summon their Keyblades. The camera switches to Terra, who also summons his Keyblade. I'm scared now. It felt as though they were about to come out of the PSP and hack me to bits. The camera switches back to Xehanort, who summons his own Keyblade in response. A brief loading screen processes as another dark photograph briefly flickers on screen. It was too fast for me to see, but it looked familiar for some reason. The tune to the nursery rhyme Cradle begins to play in the background. The screen ends as another information bar hovers over with a message, similar to the one that was written on the enclosed note. Maintain the cradle, see the void. Terra immediately rushes Xehanort as I gain control of him. I have Xehanort guard against Terra's attack and use Counter Hammer, Terra's counter command in the original game. The attack does a lot of damage, both to Terra's HP and his body. The force of the hammer pushes one of his arms off as it falls into the void below. Terra continues his attacks as I proceed to repeat the counter hammer over and over until his HP was at its final gauge. Xehanort guards another attack while I get a glimpse at my enemy. His body was practically destroyed at this point. His ears were gone, as well as his left arm. His flesh was mangled while his armor cracked. The stomach wound he had when I got to this place was expanded beyond repair, and his right eye was gone. It was like something out of an autopsy photo. I resisted the urge to vomit as I had Xehanort use one of the commands in his command deck, Dark Haze. Xehanort cloaks himself in darkness and rushes at Terra, running him, well, what's left of him, through with the Keyblade. At this point, the scene zooms in on Xehanort and Terra as I receive a prompt to rapidly press X. I do so, and it switches to a reaction sequence. Xehanort pulls his sword out of Terra's body as Terra tries to grab his Keyblade. Xehanort then knocks Terra against the head with the guard of his weapon as Terra finally falls to his knees. Xehanort then lifts the Keyblade into an air, and with an insane chuckle that sounded suspiciously like a man in real life, swung his weapon. Terra's head graphically comes off at the seams as it rolls off of the platform the two are on, and falls into the abyss. The area where the head once stood began to explode with blood in small parts as the entire body slumps to the ground lifelessly. Xehanort chuckles again, giving the body a push with his right boot. The body rolls off of the platform and into the chasm to join the head that adorned it. This was becoming really offensive. Kingdom Hearts was not some bloody samurai action flick, it was a children's game. I regain control of Xehanort as Ventus jumps from his piece of the awakening and engages Xehanort right away. The counter hammer strategy wouldn't work with him, he was way too fast. The only way I could beat fire was with fire. I used another command, Ars Solum, to attack Ventus after I had guarded a few of his attacks. Xehanort assaulted Ventus with slash after slash of his Keyblade as I saw how damaging they were. Ven's HP gauge had been reduced to its final gauge already, but that wasn't the half of it. His body was entirely mutilated by the attack Xehanort had used. Slash marks adorned his body, while I see his remaining eyes hanging out of its socket. The stomach wound he had when I had reached this place was expanded and eaten through so much that his spine was now visible to the naked eye. His arms were just bone now, all of the tissue and flesh that had been shaven off during Xehanort's slash frenzy. The blood from the muscles flooded the platform the two were on, as Ventus advances on Xehanort again. I was desperate to end this nightmare as fast as I could, so I used Dark Haze again after I dodged some of his attacks. The attack ran Ventus through as another prompt came up, another reaction sequence starting. Xehanort removed his weapon from Ventus's body as he jumps into the air, slamming his keyblade onto the platform. Sharp masses of rock pierce Ventus's body as one of them pokes through his arm, the arm falling onto the platform. The rest of his body falls and gets itself caught in another rock form. The tip of the rock finds itself established through the stomach wound, so it does little damage. Ventus tries to struggle free, but cannot, since his spine is serving as the support for the form. The game prompts me to press X again as I do so. After I succeed, I immediately wish I hadn't. Xehanort raises his left hand, covered in darkness, as the rocks bend themselves to his will, the main one going further through Ven's stomach wound. Xehanort then arranges and moves his hand, causing the rock form to twist and mutate themselves as the rest of them pierce various parts of Ven's body. The clap of Xehanort's hands finally stops them, while Xehanort keeps his hands clamped together. Ventus screams in agony, his voice becoming distorted for some odd reason. The nursery tune in the background plays faster as Xehanort finally spreads his arms into the air. The rock form explodes in a shower of light, as Ven's body is ripped apart by the pressure. Parts and blood drip down into the chasm below, as Xehanort picks up something resembling brain matter, tossing it downward. I regain control of Xehanort as Aqua jumps onto the platform. She enters combat stance and begins walking around, cautiously waiting for me to make a move. She's a mage, so long-distance attacks aren't a good idea. I use Arm Solemn as my first move. Aqua manages to dodge the attack completely as she launches shards of Blizzard at Xehanort. I manage to dodge all the shards but one. And then I feel it. A sharp pain in my mind just when the shard had connected. I was worried for my life, but I had to keep going. I have Xehanort attack with a 3-hit combo, interrupting a possible thunder spell from Aqua. At that moment, I seize my chance and use Ars Solum. The attack, like with the others, does major damage, sending Aqua's HP plummeting to its final gauge. I try to use Dark Haze to follow up, but she predicts this and cartwheels out of the way, the attack failing. She sends a fireball at Xehanort, which I manage to send flying back at her. It connects, flames covering her body, while she grabs her head and begins screaming in agony, her voice distorted as well. I seize the chance and finally attack her with a 3-hit combo. Her HP dies down as I receive another X prompt. Xehanort puts his hands directly through the flames and picks up Aqua in a bear hug. He presses on her body hard as I hear a loud crunching sound. I know what had happened next. He's broken her spine. He lifts her up into the air with both hands and starts to pull on her body from both sides. A final scream is heard from Aqua as her body is finally ripped into 2 symmetrical halves. After waiting for the blood and gore to fall from the halves, Xehanort laughs and throws the 2 halves into the pit. The camera then enters cutscene mode, while I myself take the time to vomit all over my floor. Xehanort begins to cackle madly, his voice different. He sounded like a man in his mid-30s, the audio directly ripped or recorded from whoever made this. At that moment, more gruesome real-life decapitation photos flooded the screen in rapid precision. I began breathing heavily as I waited for them to pass. A man hooked to a machine, having his jawbone ripped in half by opening his mouth way too wide. A woman tied to a conveyor belt, a meat grinder in front of her. A man strapped to an electric chair on fire from the electricity, a la the Green Mile. A little boy having his intestines pulled out of his stomach as his eyes are kept open by clamps, forcing him to watch. And others way too horrific to describe on this account. Finally, the photos pass as Xehanort begins to walk toward the edge of the platform piece he was on. I have a good feeling that I know what he's going to do. He takes the Keyblade and turns it on himself. just like Riku had done earlier. He stabs himself with the keyblade as it stays in his body. He then turns to look at me through the camera. "The bow has broken, Andrew," Xehanort says in his normal voice. "Down will come Andrew, cradle and all." The hairs on my neck stand on end as Xehanort finally falls off the platform, giving himself over to the abyss he had discarded the others into. Another gruesome photo plasters itself onto the screen as the tune in the background continues to play. It depicted the remains of a boy's body that had been shattered due to a long fall. The brain matter and blood were spread out along what looked like grass. That's when I see it. Across from the body was the remains of a baby's cradle. The photo then disappears as another takes on its place. It's the same picture, but shot from a different angle. A tree branch is visible, and next to the branch is the body's face. It's my face. With a loud scream, I throw my PSP across the room, and it hits the wall with a wham. The parts of the console fly around and land in separate areas, while the screen lands nearby. I notice that despite the impact, it's the only thing that was completely intact, and it looked like there was still something on the screen. My curiosity gets the better of me as I get up and wade through my own vomit, finally ending up next to the screen. It was still on, and I saw... The note ends here. 2 days after the incident, local police agencies found the remains of the body of Andrew Doe by a tree outside his house. An autopsy revealed that the cause of death had been due to an impact that crushed all of his internal organs. Since there were no witnesses and no evidence to support the possibility of a murder, the case was deemed a suicide and closed indefinitely. 2 years prior to the incident, a 30-year-old man was arrested for killing his 18-year-old son by tying him to the insides of a wooden cradle and pushing him off the roof of their home. The child died upon impact with the ground. The father was given the death penalty. The mother of the child disappeared and was never seen.